Let's turn to another story that has gripped the country. Targeted terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir, which have killed 2 civilians over the last 5 days. 2 school professors killed in broad daylight in Srinagar, raising alarms in security establishments across the country. The valley gripped with fear again. Are we heading back to some of the worst days of the 90s, where specific communities like the Kashmiri Pandits were targeted? It's our other big story tonight.
Terror claims 2 more lives in Kashmir. Supinder Kour and Deepak Chand are the latest victims of the wave of targeted killings by terrorists in the valley. The school principal and teacher were shot dead at their workplace, the Government Boys Higher Secondary School in Eidgah area of Srinagar. Their families are devastated. Deepak Chand had called his wife on the phone just minutes before the terror attack.
आज सुबह 11 बजे बात हुई थी, बस थोड़ी सी बात हुई, उन्होंने व्रत रखा हुआ तो वो गाड़ी में बैठे थे, बस उसके बाद कोई बात नहीं की। मैंने थोड़ी सी बात हुई उनसे, बस वो स्कूल में ही बैठे थे गाड़ी में। बस
हमारी वहाँ ही है, सब कुछ वहाँ छोड़ के आए हैं, एक चिमटा नहीं लाए। तो पहले भी एक मारा था, हमारा बड़ा मेरा हस्बैंड मारा था उन्होंने पहले।
On Tuesday, a prominent citizen of Srinagar and chemist Makhan Lal Bindru and 2 other civilians, Virender and Mohammad Shafi Lone, were murdered in separate incidents of shootings.
मैं बस यही बोलना चाहूँगी कि he was a gem of a human being and his spirit, उनको शरीर को मार सकते हो।
Security across the valley is tightened following the killings. Union Home Minister Amit Shah held an emergency security review with NSA Ajit Doval and the heads of BSF and CRPF.
How do you see this?
सर
सर जम्मू कश्मीर पे क्या बोलेंगे सर? आज की मीटिंग है जो
मोटे तौर पर मुझे लगता है कि घटना हुई है तो निश्चित रूप से जिम्मेदारी हमारी है, हम उसको स्वीकार करते हैं, लेकिन कोई स्पेसिफिक इस तरह का इनपुट नहीं था। हाँ, मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है।
Today's dastardly killing in Srinagar has brought back horrors of the 1990s back in Kashmir Valley. The high alert has been sounded and there was a meeting even in the Home Ministry here in North Block. What is important is for security forces not only to be on high alert but to ensure that there is safety and security for minorities and citizens. With camera person Ashok Banod, this is Kamaljeet Sandhu in Delhi for India Today.
Targeted killings on the rise in Kashmir. Is there a bid to divide the valley on communal lines? Has the intelligence network of the country failed? Are terrorists changing their strategy? Just some of the questions that we will raise tonight. Nalin Kohli, national spokesperson of the BJP and advocate at the Supreme Court, joins me. Dr. Sameer Kaul is chief national spokesperson of the National Conference. Shrishti Kaul is a Kashmiri Pandit based in Jammu now. Manoj Joshi, distinguished fellow ORF, written numerous books on the valley, and Syed Suhail Bukhari, chief spokesperson of Jammu and Kashmir PDP and media advisor to Mehbooba Mufti, among my guests tonight. I want to get reactions to all that has happened in the last few days, particularly in the last 48 hours. Shrishti Kaul, give us your reaction when you heard today again targeted killings, school teachers apparently identified by the community, a Hindu and a Sikh being killed. Your response today, is this fear being spread after what happened just yesterday?
We are still processing, honestly, each one of us, we are still processing. We are on WhatsApp group, we are privately messaging each other. We are still processing this news. It's been horrible 48 hours for us. We had so many, starting with Mr. Bindru, all of us knew him. All of us had kind of connection with him. And today's horrific incident, it's just brutal. It's brutal. And to think of it, to say that, we are back to 90s, early 90s, I would totally agree on that point. You should see the way the terrorists are killing, the targeting, the official communication, if you see, by TRF. It seems like that, these are all normal comments and, posts we check on social media every day.
Are you in a sense, though, as you told our guest desk, you did not even want to come and show your face. Is there fear now? Is this an attempt, you think, to spread fear once again, like the attempt was made in the 1990s to Kashmiri Pandits?
There are many reasons, and yes, this is one of them. I have never felt like this in my life. I was born in Kashmir, but I was raised in Jammu. I've always realized the importance of freedom. I know what freedom means. We have always seen that. My family, my grandparents have always shared their scary stories from Kashmir, but last 48 hours have been horrific. We have seen it on social media. It's full of nonsense, of what they are targeting us, of how they are celebrating it. And like I said, the language used by them is same of what we see on social media. There has to be a definition. There has to be a line. We have to draw between freedom of speech and the nonsense which we are reading every day. And
those Srishti called, those are very strong words.
Like I said, please read the communication peddled by...
those are very, very...
I mean it. I mean each and every word. Right. I know it, let it be, but I mean each and every word, what I'm saying, what I have seen it, what we are reading it every day. These things are not normal.
Let me get more reactions. I'm joined by Nalin Kohli, National Spokesperson, BJP. Nalin Kohli, the belief was that the BJP would ensure normalcy, quote unquote, when they came to power in the Kashmir Valley. What we've seen in the last 48 hours, some fear is back to the bad old days. Targeted killings, communities being targeted, fear being spread. Your response, because at the end of the day, it's the government of the day which has to reassure people like Ms. Kaul here that normalcy can be restored.
Of course, you're right that the onus will fall on the government, but it's equally important, Mr. Sardesai, that we don't lose sight of the forest for a tree. I mean, let's not forget the fact that terrorism as an instrument of state policy has existed. In this year alone, more than 300 such terrorists have been eliminated by the security forces, including of the Jammu and Kashmir State Police. So I think we need to look at the larger picture equally. This is a clear targeting killing of Hindus and Sikhs by these people who are misusing Islam. So I think we also need to understand that the jihadi school of misusing Islam is a global phenomenon. In our neighborhood, it's pretty serious. In Afghanistan today, the Anas Haqqani tweeted that he was paying respects to Mahmoud Ghazni, who destroyed the Somnath idol. He put it out in tweet. That's the government of Afghanistan. We know the connection with the government of Pakistan, of the Haqqani.
No, I couldn't agree with... No, I agree with the role... I agree with the role that Islamic... Just a minute, sir.
We are on the same page.
Sir, just a minute. I agree with the role that Islamic terrorists play. Sure. My only point is, when you were in the opposition, when such attacks would take place, you would ask, where is the government? What is Manmohan Singh doing? Is he wearing bangles? These were the words that were used. These were the words used by the likes of... by you when you all were in the opposition. Chudiya pehni hui hai. Today, what are we to say to your government then? Should the opposition say the same? Do you now accept that fighting terror is easier when you're in the opposition than when you're in government?
So if you have finished your question, Mr. Sardesai, I won't tell anyone else. I'll tell you,
sir,
as the anchor of the show and a senior journalist, that perhaps you would do well to look at the difference of the track record of 10 years of the Manmohan Singh government and the 7 years of the Narendra Modi government. Article 370 doesn't exist, number one. Article 370 became an instrument to make sure that you could have the Kashmiri Hindus, Pandits, eliminated from the valley, a genocide take place against them, a separatist mindset give further rise to jihadi thinking. It's been the cause of it. One of the factors has been removed. Number two, did Balkot not happen? After Pulwama, please show me the equivalent of it. Anywhere before the Narendra Modi government? After Uri, did the surgical strike happen or not? Has that lead line not been drawn that if you fire from across the border, you will get back more firepower from this side of the border? So I mean, Pakistan is not stopped to desist. But under the government of Prime Minister Modi, the response has certainly been far greater. Let me take another thing. From the Sharm el Sheikh statement to how we stand today on the diplomatic, in terms of the thinking, or in terms of the confluence of thinking at the global level with regard to terrorism. Is there not a clear change? Not perceptible, but a clear change?
You know,
so
these
I
are,
think,
you know, these are, no, that is
yes,
your
of course,
view. There
you
will
can
be
look at it in a narrow prism and say, no, I want to see only on the ground.
Sir, that is your view.
You are entitled to yours as I am entitled to
Let me bring in Manoj Joshi on that. Manoj Joshi, are you seeing a perceptible change, as Nalin Kohli is saying, in the way the government deals with such cases compared to the 1990s? Or at the end of the day, is the Modi government also recognizing what previous Indian governments have recognized, that cross-border terrorism and in this instance targeted killings aimed to perhaps promote a communal divide are not easy to stop?
Well, what I'd say is that yes, what we've been witnessing in the last 2 or 3 this week has been acts of pure terrorism, in the sense they are targeting non-combatants, civilians, and also, if you notice, targeting people of the minority community. All that's true. My point is the Kashmir issue, and I think Nalin is totally wrong on all that, that as far as the Kashmir issue is concerned, there is an element of separatism, there is an element of militancy. If you look at the Kashmir issue, you will find that often the targets are security forces and the state, which is the characteristic of an insurgency. But what the present government has done is saying everyone is a terrorist, which means you can't talk to anyone, because obviously you can't deal with terrorists. No one's going to have a negotiation with terrorists. So the point is, if you want to resolve the Kashmir issue, you also need a political negotiation. And what has happened is that this particular government has ruled out the political negotiation. They say we are going to fix it physically. We'll wipe out everyone who is a militant. We'll imprison everyone who has different ideas. Not only that, they've imprisoned people like Farooq Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti, and people who are actually people who support the Indian state, who have taken an oath as chief ministers of the Indian state. So what I'm trying to say is that their strategy is all wrong.
Let me take that to the politicians in a way, because we have 2 of the parties of the valley and get quick comments from them. Dr. Samir Kaul, Chief National Spokesperson, National Conference. I mean, where does the National Conference stand on these issues? I saw Omar Abdullah tweeting and strongly reacting and expressing sympathy with the families who've lost their lives. Is that enough? What can you do? I mean, are you all also powerless at the end of the day when you're faced with a gun?
Rajdeep, first of all, let me talk to you not just as a chief spokesperson for the National Conference, but let me talk to you as a Kashmiri Pandit, a Kashmiri, and as a human. There is absolutely no doubt that external geopolitical arguments that my friend Nalin Kohli put forth have an indirect bearing on what happens in Kashmir. But there is a lot happening within our context, internally in the domestic politics, and in how we are dealing with the situation, the policies that we used over the last 4 to 5 years in dealing with the situation. My question is, militancy, whether abetted by Pakistan or by Taliban or by whoever, will only and only succeed and overpower and periodically your grid if there is a local support to it. I can tell you that very frankly, that for a long time people believed that there was absolutely all is hunky-dory and we are in good times, and we never accounted for the fact that it may have been strategically so from the other side, waiting for the right moment to strike. The question is, the local people, the so-called fence sitters whom we always dismiss, and always people who don't have a voice, the large voiceless people of Jammu and Kashmir state who are forced by the militants, forced by our own government to do things that they don't like.
Let me take that to Suhail. Let me take that to Suhail Bukhari as well. Suhail Bukhari, is there, in a sense, was this festering for a while? And it's now come out the terrorists have struck, as Samir Kaul is saying, at a time when perhaps India's vulnerable Home Minister is going to Kashmir in a few days. The attempt was being made to suggest normalcy is returning, local body elections will be held. Now the terrorists, and there could be an Afghan connection as well, are now coming using local support to strike again.
Well, Rajdeep, you know, Mr. Kohli, while speaking earlier, again tried to reinforce that absolute false narrative of things, you know, improving magically post-abrogation of 370. In fact, you know, the current situation is belying his claims and the claims of his party and the government that they have been trying to propagate all along. Post 370, the security situation, the direct governance is directly under the control of the central government. There is an LG, the MHA, Home Minister, Union Home Minister directly oversees the security affairs of Jammu and Kashmir. Look at this situation now. You've been a journalist, you've been keeping an eye. Mr. Manoj Joshi is there. He can tell you that the situation has deteriorated, particularly in Srinagar over last year or so. They have been trying to portray that, you know, we've restored normalcy. And, you know, the current situation has actually exposed such claims. In the overall context of things, yes, it's good at least that somebody like you who has started questioning them, the government, as to why this situation has arisen.
You know, all of you are in a way have a common target, Nalin Kohli. Nalin Kohli, you set the, you know, in a way and that's what happens once you're in government. You are now accountable. When you were in opposition, it was so much easier to say the failings of Farooq Abdullah, failings of Mehbooba Mufti, failings of a Manmohan Singh at the center. Now the shoe is on the other foot.
But Rajdeep, I must say, I find it amusing, and you'll pardon it.
Yes.
But I just don't understand, where am I running away from that? Yes, where those failings had to be pointed out, and they were pointed out. And certainly we are entitled to put out our narrative of how we see it. And as the others on your panel, just as I have a point of view, they have it. Manoj Joshi believes I've got it completely wrong. I don't agree with his narrative. I mean, he's entitled to it, and he's to be respected for his point of view, even if I may disagree with it completely. But let me also give a counter viewpoint that there is a school of thought that says that if you pick up a gun and decide to live by the bullet, then you have to be prepared to die by a bullet, because then you've got one less terrorist living in this planet. And I don't see any harm in that. You talk to those who are willing to talk. You don't talk to those who are willing to shoot. So I think, you know, we need to understand that there's a mismatch sometimes.
But this,
on the second
the
part
government's claim
that we were reaching a restoration of the process. Have elections not taken place at the one minute.
The government has always claimed
in terms of the political process, are we not seeing those steps being taken by the government? Of course we are moving towards normalcy. And I'm saying that, yes, of course we are. Because are we not moving towards a political process again? It started, the BJP, everybody said this will be rigged elections when those district elections were taking place. This will be rigged, the BJP will. The BJP didn't win. In fact, on the contrary, the spokespersons of the other party are there. Their party is one more. So, I mean, there is a movement towards normalcy. It has already been said so. But with regard to terrorism, I pointed out the geopolitical, the larger picture, and I pointed out also to the fact that the security forces will do what they have to. Mr. Joshi's point of view is that you also need to talk, which is his point of view. That is an option which is with the government, which it will exercise when it deems fit.
Manoj Joshi, what would be a better solution? You give me a solution, very easy for all of us, whether armchair critics, whether those in government. How do you deal with terror? How do you deal with Islamic terror groups that are determined in a way to push forward their agenda? What would you do differently?
Look, let me be very clear. There's only one way to deal with terrorism. You've got to kill the terrorists, you've got to wipe out the terrorists, okay? But the point I'd like to make is that Kashmir was not just simply a terrorist movement. This is something which the government has now classified. I would say Kashmir was an insurgency, a militancy, a separatist movement. All those parts involve political negotiation. And that is where the government has messed it up, because in the sense things were going fine. If you look at the figures, it'll go up to 2011. come down the figures and you see that the number of people being killed, the number of security personnel being killed was declining. And then suddenly this government comes in and they say, no, we're going to wipe it out. It's not just going to be... See, these are things which have to be slowly, subtly suppressed and eliminated. Instead, what has happened is that someone came and said, we're going to wipe it out. So Article 370 ko hatao, Kashmir ko demote kar do, you know, as a state.
So you're saying...
What was the logic? I still... Article 370 mein koi jaan nahi tha. There's no dum in Article 370. Demoting Kashmir, I think that is simply a churlish act. That's all I can say. It is a churlish act.
Let me, you know, I have limited time. I have limited time. I just want to go therefore to Ms. Kaul, who's been, as I said, come on a phone line without her face. She doesn't want to reveal herself. That's the fear factor. You have a quick final message for the people of Kashmir, those who want to divide Kashmir by or spread fear. Do you have a final message for them? Ms. Kaul, are you still with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
What is your final message, ma'am?
So it's for everyone, from politicians, government to everyone. Firstly, to government, if you can give us, if you can provide us security, then do that. If you can't, at least warn us that. To intelligence agencies, please let us know. Please don't act in a way that, you know, we lost so many lives like this. I am hearing stories. I am getting messages of people literally leaving Kashmir right now in such hurry, from by car, by plane. They're all leaving. To local population, please come out and, you know, denounce terrorism, denounce this hardcore ideology of guys are spreading in the name of Kashmiriyat. This does not fare well. Everyone is suffering because of that. This does not fare well. Please read the comments we have been going through. People are literally celebrating. People are just not coming up from the locals.
Sure, but there are also, let me be honest, there are lots of locals that I've spoken to who are also angry. I want to be fair. There are lots of locals I've spoken to who are angry with what has happened.
Besides blaming Pakistan and Afghanistan, we have to question the local people also.
Sure, but there are also locals who have stood up and saying enough is enough. But how do you stand up against the gun? This is a question that Kashmiris will have to answer at some stage. How will they come together collectively? Whether you're a Kashmiri Muslim, a Kashmiri Pandit, a Sikh, you have to come together to stand up against terror. Not easy, but it's going to have to be done. I want to thank all my guests for joining me.